Representation by population is one of the basic principles of democracy. But in Canada, we've consistently compromised it, minimized it, and watered it down. As a result, if you're an Ontarian, your vote in a federal election counts for far less than that of a Manitoban or a Maritimer or someone from Saskatchewan. And if you're an Ontarian living in a city or the suburbs, particularly the 905 belt around Toronto, your vote doesn't carry the same weight as that of someone from rural Canada or the North. In the last federal election, voters in 6 Canadian provinces, Atlantic Canada plus Manitoba and Saskatchewan, sent far more members of Parliament to Ottawa than they should have been entitled to. And the 3 fast-growing provinces, British Columbia, Alberta, and especially Ontario, sent far fewer. The average riding in Saskatchewan has about 70,000 people, and the same goes for Nova Scotia and New Brunswick. But in Ontario, the average riding has around 110,000 people. So, a vote in one of those small provinces carries 50% more weight than the vote of an Ontarian. What's more, many of the ridings in the 905 have twice as many people as the average riding in a small province, and 3 times as many residents as some rural and northern ridings. The result is a House of Commons that doesn't look like Canada. It amplifies the representation of the parts of the country that are the smallest, least dynamic, and slowest growing, while minimizing the voice of the most economically successful and fastest growing provinces and cities, which are, incidentally, the parts of the country where most immigrants settle and where most visible minorities live. The bottom line is that we've created a system that, however inadvertently, gives extra votes to parts of the country that just happen to be overwhelmingly white, and systematically takes votes away from suburban ridings that are, in many cases, heavily non-white. That's not a picture to be proud of. The federal government has introduced a bill that goes a long way to fixing at least half of the problem. Under what the Tory government is calling the Fair Representation Act, Ontario will get 15 more seats in the House of Commons, boosting it from 106 members to 121. Alberta and BC will each gain 5 seats to 33 and 41 seats, respectively. And Quebec will grow by 3 seats to 78. The 6 small provinces will still be overrepresented in Parliament, but to a far lesser degree. Quebec will continue to be the mean, the one province whose representation almost perfectly reflects its population. And Ontario will still be slightly underrepresented, but the gap will be much smaller. The country is becoming more Western, and in particular far more Ontarian, and Parliament will more accurately represent that. At least as between provinces, Canada will have something that looks a lot more like what you're supposed to have in a democracy, rep by pop. But what the bill doesn't fix is the urban-rural disparity. There's no reason why suburban voters in Brampton, Markham, Vaughan, and Mississauga should carry less weight than voters in rural and northern Ontario. And there's even less logic to a system that consistently draws boundaries, making suburban 905 ridings more populous, and hence less influential, than neighboring urban ridings in Toronto. In a democracy, you're supposed to count votes so that all votes count. We're getting closer, but we're not there yet. For the Agenda with Steve Paikin, I'm Tony Keller.